First of all, thank you for the very kind introduction. I actually just wanted to correct on the my district did change with redistricting. The counties that mentioned earlier were my prior district, but I'm now representing the 131st Assembly District, which is now all of Ontario County and the northern half of Seneca County. So in redistricting, I got a much more compact district, which is very unusual, but very good. What used to take me 2 hours and 20 minutes plus to drive one end of the district to the other, now any place in my district it would take me no longer than about 35-40 minutes. So a lot of less wear and tear on the car and less wear and tear on me, and that's always good. Manufacturing. I know that's what you hear about today. Certainly, since I've been in the legislature going back to 2000, manufacturing and its issues and its importance to New York State's economy has always been number one with me. I spent close to 25 years in manufacturing, and as mentioned, not to repeat the resume, but I have worked for large and small companies, multinational, international companies as well. I've traveled abroad in most of the continents, but not all, and manufacturing is still near and dear to my heart, and nothing I like better than going to take a tour, whether it's a small startup business or a large company. I really love getting around the state and touring companies that really, I think, add the most value in terms of the economy in the state. Now, that's no disrespect to folks that work in tourism or the financial services, but I think all of you know manufacturing adds 3 to 4 jobs for every one job that we create in manufacturing. And manufacturing pays fairly well in terms of our state, and always has been that way. And so there's a lot of contribution to New York State's economy that I think is very important. You know, some of the issues, I'm sure, and prior speakers already covered a lot of issues, but I'll just mention a couple that I have continued to champion until we get rid of them. We'll continue to champion. Two that come right off the top of my mind is eliminating the corporate franchise tax and, of course, the 18A utility assessment surcharge. In fact, I did write a letter to Governor Cuomo back in December on those specific issues as well. Last year, our conference actually did amendments to the budget last year. It was defeated for the most part along party lines. And if this year's budget, whenever we get to the final budget, does not contain some of these provisions, again, we will make the case for business and for jobs and introduce those amendments. And because it's important to continue to send a message to the majority, which is what the minority does, but also to both houses of the legislature and also the governor, in terms of somebody's got to harp on these issues if they're not going to take action on these issues. And certainly, I think at times it can be very frustrating, as well as I know it can be frustrating to you, saying, hey, we've been talking about these issues for a long, long time. You know, we talked about energy for the longest time, the Article 10 siting law that languished for years, power for jobs in terms of getting certainty. Before we actually got those bills done in the last couple of years, our conference, the Assembly Republican Conference, was the conference that kept bringing those issues up. And it was great that we finally got them done, but I can also tell you that we keep hammering the drum on these issues that we believe have not taken hold yet. My working relationship with MACNY is fantastic. It's a great organization. They're very proactive in terms of representing your interests in Albany, and certainly we have a great communication relationship that they're constantly informing us any changes, whether they're minor or major, in terms of your priorities. And I think MACNY is very valuable to us as a legislator and certainly as a legislative leader because we continually to reach out to business groups throughout the state. I say this without shame and without disrespect to the other conferences, but I believe the Assembly Republican Conference is the most pro-business conference in the state legislature. Now, some might say, well, you know, compared to what? But I would also say if you look at our legislative track record, the bills that we introduce, the agenda that we push, we have been the most outspoken proponent of business, and that business means jobs in our state, and it's just not an entity to go tax, fine, and harass in terms of that mentality. And I've been very outspoken about that. You know, it's interesting, I just glanced at the Business Review newspaper here in Albany, or the capital region, and they actually talked about a couple different companies that were very frustrated with New York State, and they were saying, we don't believe New York State's open for business. We know it's a marketing slogan, but we believe there's still many obstacles. They cited regulations. I couldn't agree more. When we talk about state agencies that have really not gotten it yet, that all of you are customers, not revenue streams, I think that's the type of message that I continue to articulate every chance I get, especially as we get wind of a policy or a regulation or something that we're not doing that will help the cause. Now, something that's sort of dotted related to manufacturing, but in terms of the service industry, on the transportation side, because I see my good buddy over here, Steve Wadhams, I was the first legislative leader, and we were the first conference to speak out against the 45% toll hike by the New York State Thruway Authority. And I can tell you that that had fast-track legs when it was first announced. They thought that baby was just going to breeze right through. Well, good old-fashioned shoe leather, work by businesses across the state, the transportation industry, and one of the things I kept saying was we should look at consolidating the Department of Transportation with the Thruway Authority. Economies of scale, I'm sure you all know what that means, but certainly that we have to look at ways to save money and not necessarily fix everything with a toll increase, a fee increase, a tax increase, and this is certainly what puts up barriers for us doing business in New York State. And the good news is they decided not to go forward. But I can tell you, and I cite that as a significant accomplishment because, quite frankly, no one else was talking about it except the industry directly when this first came out, except myself and our conference. And that's our job. Now, sometimes we win those battles, sometimes we don't. But I can also tell you that we will take those battles to the street and to the airways whenever we can get it, because, again, I see that as our role. Now, some people also, you know, kind of get this coalescing thought that if you're not in the majority in Albany, or if you're not in the second floor, that you're not relevant. I'm here to tell you that is not true. Every single major fiscal policy that was put forth, good fiscal policy, in the first 2 years of the governor's agenda, and I may have mentioned this last year, came from the Assembly Republican Conference. I'm not claiming any credit for the social agenda. I'm just talking about the fiscal agenda. And because that's our priority. Our priority is public policy, better ideas, better solutions, and not just saying no. And so that's why, in terms of, I still think we got a lot of work yet to be done on the tax side. I think we have a lot of work done to still do on the energy side. And I know we talked about the utility assessment surcharge, but I can also tell you that I have a large manufacturer in my district, employs over 900 people. They're owned by a company that has multi-plants throughout the world, that basically one of the, shall we say, decision makers in terms of whether they grow the facility there or someplace else is energy costs. And even though we have power for jobs, that just is not enough to do it because we still have some of the highest utility taxes in the nation. So we have to keep focusing in on that. Workers' compensation reform, there's some of that in this budget. I'm hopeful that some of that will hold true as we go forth in the budget negotiations, but certainly also workforce development. Back when I was running a manufacturing facility, even then workforce development was an issue in terms of training, skill enhancement, changing world that we're living in terms of new skills are required. Obviously computers, what used to be, you know, a joy to have, are now a must to have. And I can also tell you that from a workforce development perspective, the world is changing so much and advanced manufacturing has changed so much, we have to invest in workforce development and to try to use people that are there. They're good people, they're good workers, but they just don't have what I'll call the 21st century skill set to be utilized, and that's why we got to help them be utilized. In terms of economic development, because I want to leave a few minutes for questions, you know, the governor specifically talked about upstate, that one of his main initiatives was casino gambling. I happen to disagree with that. You know, I have a casino in my district in the town of Farmington. That's great. They employ a couple hundred people. But I believe the three top priorities in our state should be advanced manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture and agribusiness. I think those create the highest paying jobs, and I think they provide long-term stability to our state. And I think we really should be focusing more on how we can help those industries grow right here in New York State. And it shouldn't always be about a government giveaway program per se. I think if it was up to me, if we could lower our property taxes, lower our utility taxes, lower our cost of workers' compensation, lower energy costs, and maybe we don't need so much government assistance, which means we can take that money and return it to the taxpayer, which is certainly my goal. So I just want to share those few things with you from a theme perspective, and also what a priority perspective we come from. And for those that haven't known me prior to this, is I take public policy very seriously. I really try to advocate with our conference. It's about coming up with good public policy alternatives or ideas. It isn't so much about bashing the other side politically. I'll be perfectly frank with all of you. Sometimes I get criticism from my own party that I'm not kneecapping enough. I just don't believe in it. I don't think it moves the ball forward. I don't think it helps us get things done. And quite frankly, I think in the last 4 years since I've been a legislative leader, I think the tone and tenor in the Assembly has changed significantly. We've got members talking to each other on both sides of the aisle. In fact, we're having I think there's a press conference on Wednesday that is being co-hosted by Assembly Democrats and Republicans about trying to redirect some New York Works funds back to localities for local highway and bridge repair. That would have been unheard of 4 years ago. And I'd like to see more of that. Just like I'd like to see the majorities in both houses and the governor is do more outreach to the minorities in both houses to solicit ideas. Now, make no bones about it, I can count in terms of votes. I get it. I know we're outnumbered in the Assembly, and certainly I know Republicans are outnumbered by Democrats in both houses of the legislature. However, if we really want to change this state, and I've said this to the governor and his people, is that what does it hurt to just hear what we have to say? You can then decide to use it or not, or maybe it'll help you in some negotiations with the two majorities if you have us at the table at least promoting an agenda that can help us grow this state. And so that's what I really try to do every single day. And very quickly, I'm sorry Joe couldn't make it, Joe Morelli. Joe is a friend of mine from Rochester. Do we agree on every public policy? No. But I will also tell you that Joe and I have been friends, colleagues, and we get along very well. We will debate on different things. We'll vote differently on certain things. But one of the things I have to tell you, since Joe couldn't make it here today, is that Joe has been a sheer joy to work with. I had a very good relationship with Ron Canestrari from the majority when he was the majority leader. And we're continuing that now with Joe. And again, I think it sets a tone and tenor for the state to see us working together whenever we can. But where we can't, we will speak up, but we'll do so professionally and respectfully, just like I think all of you do for the most part when you're challenged with your business issues with your businesses or with your industries.